Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my privilege to host today a very, very special guest who is Ambassador Genci Mucaj. And I would like to introduce our ambassador, who is a very, very engaged diplomat in global affairs. Ambassador Genci Mucaj is actually the senior advisor for foreign relations to the President of the Republic of Albania. He was head of Foreign Relations Committee of the Parliament. He served also as an ambassador in Turkey to of the Republic of Albania. He also served as non-resident ambassador of several countries. He's engaged in civil society. He's part of the Global Executive Board of People to People International, and he's engaged in the education sector and many, many global initiatives that are very important in the diplomatic world, but also for students and also for young audiences. That is why we have the pleasure to invite him here today with us, and he accepted to be with you today to respond to your questions as we are launching our African Next Gen Academy to provide hands-on practical trainings on digitalization to young people from the African continent as a response to COVID-19. And this period is quite important for young people of the continent as we are trying to raise the capacity of younger audiences in different subjects to make them ready for the upcoming challenges in the job market, but also to adapt to the current transformation by COVID-19. I have my co-host who is Mr. Karim Darwish, and Mr. Karim Darwish is co-founder of Laclasse.ma, and we are very, very happy to collaborate together. And let me explain to you why International Center for Diplomacy is collaborating with Laclasse.ma. First of all, Laclasse.ma is an educational platform and is built by young people who, thought of thinking of an innovative platforms to enable students and teachers alike to finish their education during COVID-19 lockdown, and it's free of charge. So as our civic engagement, we thought that it's highly important to support each other and to start also our courses. I think today we started our first course on digital diplomacy in Laclasse.ma. We're experiencing this great initiative and a great platform, and we hope that this platform will be of use by many educational institutions all across the continent. So thank you for your innovation and your support to younger generation to finish their education, and we are very happy to collaborate together. Also, we have many partners who are collaborating with International Center for Diplomacy, more specifically in providing courses specialized in leadership, in personal branding and different other subjects that we are happy to provide to you by African experts during July and August. So without further ado, let me start my first question to His Excellency Ambassador Genci Mucaj. Ambassador Genci Mucaj, you've been engaged in a lot of initiatives, whether diplomatic or civic engagement all across the world. You have been experiencing lockdown as well, COVID-19. Maybe you have been working even more as you are assuming responsibility of senior advisor to the President of the Republic of Albania. You have assumed many responsibilities. COVID-19 has changed our way of doing business. They have changed our lives. They put the world on shutdown. And if we're thinking about diplomacy, my first question, to what extent COVID-19 and the digital acceleration is impacting the way of doing business in the diplomatic field?
That's a very good question, Ms. Karima, and I'm happy to join your audience. I had absolutely no doubt when I got the invitation from you. I've considered you from a long time one of the rising star of your region, and especially in diplomacy. I'm glad to meet with Karim Dervish as well, your colleague and moderator. Both of you represent the global citizens. Um, and of course, you put Morocco on the world map in the best way possible. So congratulations, you deserve it all. Going back to your question, COVID-19 changed the world entirely, not diplomacy only. It changed, it definitely changed the business, the way people would think, the people would meet. It changed everything. And we had to adapt to new reality. We, we really had to go back to the tools which connect us, and digitalization, the new means of communication has changed the world. We do get certain news in a second before we would not hear anything what is happening in different parts of the world. But now in real time, we do know exactly what happened, so to say, in Fiji, Algeria, Alaska, you name it, all right? And it's because of internet. Now, it has not been easy because diplomacy is an art of communication and conversation. You can conduct a conversation online. You can um, discuss a certain topic, but it's different when you talk and sit and shake hands and have this human sense that you have to interact with people. But there are things which do not depend on us. And I must say that we have adapted ourselves quite well in digital diplomacy. We've discussed important regional affairs, European affairs, security matters on our webinars. And that has worked relatively well, should I say. The main problem is people accepting the reality, because it has taken a long time for each one of us to accept reality. We were in denial. Well, that thing will change quickly. So it took us by surprise, and the world, was caught in shock for a few weeks until they understood that they have to find a way to adapt. So, and human beings are good because they adapt in certain circumstances, and that's how diplomacy does too. I mean, talking with people, discussing important matters, it's a necessity. Most of misunderstanding happen because people don't talk with each other. They don't understand each other. They don't sit down and discuss certain issues. People don't talk. People guess. I mean, how would you know what I know if you don't ask me about this? This is part of diplomacy. You sit down and you discuss, you lay down your options. They lay down their options, and eventually they agree on a certain thing. Zoom, Skype, all kinds of communication online has been just amazing. And I believe, and that's why I would like to appeal to your audience as well, I believe that this is going to be a tool of communication. Even if COVID ends, we still would really rely very heavily on digital diplomacy, and that's, you have a great role to play, Ms. Karima.
Yeah. And definitely, digitalization has changed our way of looking at things, and it certainly has an impact on diplomatic practices. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's another good question. Well, before you would conduct, let's say, diplomatic consultation, you get a group of people and you visit a certain country where you have relationship with. Let's say you go to Turkey and you discuss several diplomatic topics on a table, okay? You sit down there and you have experts from both sides, all right? That's the classical way of doing business. You sit, with your colleagues, and in front of you, you have the hosting country's diplomatic team, and you discuss about certain issues that are pending. Consular affairs, economic affairs, cultural affairs, political affairs, they require a lot of work, a lot of preparation before. I mean, you cannot just, show up there without having your folder fully prepared. Now you cannot do this. You can simply not travel as you wish because there are restrictions. What you do, you share information before you sit down and talk. And again, as much as it looks very strange and alienating, you have people talking online, it's very pragmatic because you could really use your little office like a little auditorium to discuss certain topics. Um, the communication online is essential, and it has worked quite well. As I said, it cannot replace the classic way of doing a diplomacy. That is a must. It has happened like this since the Roman times, where the diplomatic relations started by countries. They used to have senators. They didn't have ambassadors at that time. They would send an ambassador, a senator, with a letter of credentials. A letter of credentials will be presented to the head of state of that country, and it would say, "Look, this gentleman, the senator, is my messenger. So you trust and treat him in exactly the same way you treat me." But that's not like this anymore. It's simply not like this anymore. We have to adapt. It does not replace the other option of doing diplomacy. It complements it, and it simply gives you a way of resolving a situation in which we cannot change.
Okay. Karim, do you have any complimentary question on that? Your mic, let me unmute your mic.
Okay,
Right.
right now it's good. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, His Excellency, for being here. Thank you, Karima, too, for this organization. So now I have some complimentary questions. Is regardless of the fact that the lockdown accelerated the digitalization of services, but many governments right now around the world are still slow in adopting technology.
Correct.
More specifically, in the
Yes.
diplomacy field.
Yes.
What should be done to mainstream a digital culture with diplomacy, even though it has been boosted? What are the challenges of digital diplomacy and big data on international relations?
That's a very good question indeed, and it needs some elaboration. It cannot just answer with few questions, Karim.
Yeah.
Well, digitalization has a great advantage because all right, look, the way we used to do diplomacy in a classical way, you would look at the dossier, you would look at the relationship, you have a whole team of archiving the relationship on a paper base, okay? Paper base still exists, but when you have an archive, a digital archive, you can easily attract, you have a lot of things on the clouds, for example. You have relationship of Albania, so to say, with Morocco, okay? What are the relationship between two countries? How many agreements do we have together? Do we need visas to travel with each other? Do we need this and do? When you have this on the digital archive, that is instant. You don't have to look at the paper and find out what is happening, and it lines up. This is amazing. What technology has produced, it has speed up. It has speed up the relationship between countries. I mean, it is absolutely amazing, and it's a must, Karim, that each government should invest heavily on the digitalization of their archives, diplomatic archives. Now, you need to understand, and your audience needs to understand something as well. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of a country is the memory, the institutional memory of a country. That's where everything is set. The relationship of Morocco with any country around the world, the relationship, the partnership that it has. So you see, you have a king, you have a prime minister, you have a government. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it's the institutional memory of the foreign relationship of one country with the other. And it's very important. The better this is improved, the more they invest on technology, the easier it will be for any diplomat to prepare, write analysis, and come up with assessments. I mean, the old-fashioned thing, I mean, I'm an old, old guy compared to you. I'm used with books, but I'm a generation that books are important, but when you go online, you Google something, you get it. Now, when you go to, if you have a Google within your network, which is your Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the digitalization of diplomacy, that is that's a great asset. That's a very, very great asset, Karim. I don't know if I answer your question at all.
Yeah.
It's so wide.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Do we have other participants following
Yes,
us?
I will ask our participants who had any questions to just to raise your hand here, and then I can make you speaker.
Sorry,
Just
Karim.
let us know if you have any questions. But I have another question.
I will add the comments.
Sorry?
I will add the comments.
You will add, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Let me see. There are a few who are.
As a data engineer and a lover of data, I can say that the wealth of a country now is how they use data, and the wealth of any company now is data, it's not money. That's it.
Well, absolutely true. Absolutely right. I mean, I cannot agree with you more. It's money as well. Yes, you said it right. You are clever. You are smart, smarter than I am, of course. That is a business as well because you share information. Data are extremely important, absolutely important. Whatever you do, the data are exactly what make the difference because you know about things, right? You know about them. That's very important. That's critical.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have here a question. Let me allow Safa. Safa.
Hello.
Yes.
Your Excellency, my name is Safae Bouyahyaoui, and I am an IR student and currently working in a think tank here in Morocco. First of all, I would like to kindly thank you for accepting our invitation and for this webinar. And I can clearly see how engaged you are for youth and so on. So I would like to thank you for this. My question is about how digital diplomacy now, and we're talking about with digital diplomacy, we're directly thinking about developing countries who mobilize a lot of resources and who has already done extensive work in this field. And my question will be, what about countries with lesser resources and developed countries that are still having, they do not have the means, and in some African states, for instance, we do not have the right resources such as a good and stable technology and so on. So what are the steps that they need to take in front of, in order to adapt to this fast growing world, unless they, otherwise they will be back at I'm afraid they will have, there's going to be a challenge that they're going to be late from this development. Thank you. They're going to be left behind. Yes.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Safae, that's what your name was, right? Safae, that's right. Well, less developed country, as there are difficulties everywhere in the world. You have difficulties on adaptive technology, because technology is not free. I mean, you have to spend money on that, right, Karim?
Yeah.
You have to spend money.
Yeah.
And there are countries who have a lot more to do in on their own needs. They need to build hospitals, they need to build roads, they need to, have jobs for their people. But unfortunately, leaders do not fully understand, and sometimes they underestimate the importance of digital diplomacy. It is important because you make better people, you educate better people. What is, for example, Karima doing with her center? Um, it is educating young people to think wisely and think globally as well. You may be from Morocco, you may be from Albania, Paris, London, doesn't matter from where you are. You have to consider yourself a global citizen. And being global is thinking global. And of course, when you want to become a diplomat, being global is a necessity, it's a must. You have to. I mean, there's no other options. You have to be one. Now, countries, even poor ones, they need to understand they cannot dispatch themselves from the digitalization of their diplomacy. People cannot travel anymore. Diplomats cannot travel anymore. They cannot do business as they used to be doing. Okay, so my advice to them is, beside building schools, which are very important, of course, and hospitals, which are extremely important, you need to train good diplomats, because these are the people who will represent you, who walk your country through the world as well. So I know there are difficulties, a lot of huge difficulties economically, and COVID has really helped a lot, getting our economy down, not just frustration and isolation and stress by not being able to go out and mingle with people and friends and talk and have coffees, but our economy is really suffering a lot. So again, however you are poor, if you have leaders who think for the future, they need to adapt as we are adapting. As we are all adapting. Otherwise, we cannot just, we will be behind. That's it, really.
I have two questions here. One, I give the floor first to Huda Ben Yassin and then to Adnane Founoun.
Yes, no
Huda?
problem.
Huda?
Whoever is ready.
Your mic is activated. Yeah. Go ahead, Huda.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Karima, Mr. Karim, for this instructive session. I'm a student in International Administration and Management of Partnerships in the Mediterranean area. And my question to His Excellency, it's that nowadays, with digital diplomacy, the public became more sensitive to foreign policy issues and seeks to influence diplomacy through social media and all. So, in your opinion, how does this affect international relations and decision-making on an international level?
That's a wonderful question too. I mean, I'm happy to see such a crowd of young people, Miss Karima. That's wonderful. Now, and I see that the world has a better and better future with you all. Now, Miss Yassina, Huda, however, your friends call you. I told everybody before that modern means of communication have changed the world entirely, changed the way we do business, changed the way how we, tell people. You post something on Facebook, Instagram, you name it, or people know exactly what you're doing. Some people post a nice meal or a beer with a friend, and some people post some nice posts with some messages out there. Messages of peace, reconciliations. I mean, whatever you do on your telephone as you post something, it has an effect on your friendship, on your company, how many friends you have there. Imagine for a minute when you have somebody who has 1 million followers, okay? Somebody who is the head of the state, somebody who is, a peace builder. The messages they send are extremely important. And when you go public, you are public. You are not anymore just one person who represents yourself. Of course, it has a name, whatever you say, but the message will really go across people who, who follow you next. Now, in diplomacy is the same thing. Now, if you use Twitter, Twitter is a very, very, very interesting example. Twitter is a direct line with your followers, okay? Whatever you send on Twitter, and Twitter is different from Facebook and Instagram. It's different because you communicate, you send messages you better send news, okay? Now you do understand, are you following me?
Can you unmute your mic? Can you mute your mic while the ambassador is answering, please?
That's all right.
Okay.
So going back to your question again, the social media is extremely important. It is important for the messages you send because you reach a huge audience. Now, the importance of it is who uses it, because there are good people like you, Huda and Safia, but there are some bad people who can send some strange messages out there, who can make some trouble. So there is this difference out of it, okay? Now, this is social media, but in a social media, you have social outlets of official, so to say, governments. They come out there and they send a message right to millions and millions of people. You see, with social media, that's why some governments try to control social media, because it affects people directly. You as young people, you have a role, and educated young people like yourself, you should be the leaders of the world, on the geography you represent, of course, because there is so much hope. You are born and educated in a digital area, not like your parents and myself. I mean, when we wanted to send a message to somebody, it took weeks. It took weeks because you didn't even have internet. You should mail something on the on post. But let alone when you have your Facebook, your text, your messenger, I mean, it gets to the other side instantly. You have to choose now. Either you get subscribed to some good followers and good news, or to some bad news. I'm not saying you don't have to listen to some bad news, because you have to make some comparison. That's how we do in diplomacy as well. To make a decision, we look at all angles. You need to listen all kind of backgrounds to make a decision, really.
Thank you. I think probably Adnan got disconnected. Let me get to Yusuf. Yusuf?
Yes, hello everyone. Can you please confirm that you can hear me well?
Yes, yeah, we do.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Adnan is here. Okay, I'll get back to you.
So,
Adnan. Go ahead, Yusuf, and then I'll go back to Adnan.
Sure.
All others, if you can please mute, just a second. If you can mute your mic until you are speaking. Adnan, if you can mute your mic, then I'm going to allow Yusuf to ask question. After, I'll go back to Adnan, okay? Go ahead.
So my question is, from what I'm grasping, is that being a diplomat is to be a crucial point of contact for official communication between states, and it also means being of a great importance in making agreements between governments. And as everyone agrees, the COVID-19 global pandemic has changed how the international system functions. My question is, how can one assess the new emergence of diplomacy resources? For example, I'm talking or thinking about lobbying utilities and tools. And my second question is, can we consider for the moment that the political digital capabilities, can we define them as modern commodities for the current situation? And thank you.
It certainly is a modern commodity. There's no question about it. Digitalization, communication through internet, Zoom, Skype, it's a commodity. There's no question about it. Mr. Karim Dervish said early on that it's money. Yes, because it's data. Now, to get the accounts right, diplomats don't make decisions. Diplomats suggest. Leaders take decisions. Government leaders, prime ministers, you know. But diplomats are there to help and write analysis, assessments, which are almost, you know, 100% accurate, because you cannot be 100% accurate. So the decision we make, the memos we write are the ones who make leaders to make decisions. Now, you know, wars have been stopped because there is one famous saying that you need everybody to know. War starts when diplomacy stops. And war stops when diplomacy starts. So if you talk, you know, you have ceasefires, you discuss, but if you don't talk, you know, war. So diplomacy has an important role, Yusuf, extremely important role, because you have the channels of communication open. Even on a time of big wars, diplomats had always a way to communicate with each other, because that's the way you know, you shut wars, okay? And that's the way you convince leaders from both sides to, you do know the envoys that they are sent, for example, peace envoys, they are basically diplomats, whatever, even if they are not diplomats, they are tasked with diplomatic issues to resolve, and that's why diplomacy is important. But again, you need to understand, all we do is talk, assess, and advise. Decisions are made by politicians, and war is really run by military. So diplomats are always the best.
Okay, let me give the right to talk to Mr. Adnane. Mr. Adnane, are you here with us?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I can hear you. Ok, bah, en premier temps, je vais essayer de poser ma question en français, si possible, ça sera plus facile pour moi.
He doesn't understand, but I'm going to translate.
Je comprends français très bien, mais je préfère parler en anglais.
En premier temps, merci Votre Excellence pour le temps que vous avez consacré à ce passage. Nous vous remercions pleinement pour cette intervention. Sincèrement, elle est très riche. Alors, ma question prend quelque part deux grandes formes.
Oui.
La première phase de la question, est-ce que vous pensez aujourd'hui que les diplomates sont plus vulnérables que les anciens diplomates? Car quand on est sur une communication sur des plateformes, on est devant l'inconnu. Alors, on n'a pas une vraie idée sur les gens qui nous lisent, et en même temps, on n'a pas une idée sur leurs valeurs, comment ils interprètent les choses.
Ah oui.
Alors, est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, les diplomates, ils sont plus vulnérables qu'avant? Cela en premier temps. En deuxième temps, pour les jeunes diplomates, surtout que l'événement aujourd'hui, c'est principalement pour les jeunes diplomates, est-ce que vous pensez que si un jeune diplomate communique beaucoup sur les réseaux, cela ne peut pas griller sa carrière en avant, car on sait bien qu'un jeune, il est toujours dans des mutations. Alors, il se peut aujourd'hui qu'il a des idées, et d'ici 10 ans, 15 ans, il aura d'autres idées. Et sur les plateformes, le tout est sauvegardé. Alors, est-ce que cela peut créer un problème futur pour les jeunes diplomates, le fait de trop communiquer aujourd'hui, et après 10 ans, 15 ans, il peut facilement tomber dans des contradictions. Souvent, on se trouve avec des vidéos pour des grands diplomates, avec des avis différents. Est-ce que cela peut créer un problème ou non? Merci, Votre Excellence.
Okay.
Yes, you can recap. I promise I understood almost everything.
just because we have some participants who don't understand French,
exactly.
just recapitulate recapitulate the question. First of all, he asked whether diplomats today are more vulnerable than before, than old diplomats, because they are exposed to, as he said, the unknown. They're communicating with different audiences that they don't know. And also he talked about something quite interesting about young diplomats, because today diplomats has ideas, more specifically this young generation. And he asked the question whether communicating too much on social media today, maybe in 10 years, everything is going to be stored, and then probably it's going to impact their career and fall into contradictory messages of their path. So that's the
Je comprends très bien. I understood very well what you said, Adnan, and let me please start with the last questions, Karima, because that's very, very, very true. Adnan, very unfortunate. Young diplomats and diplomacy as a whole, actually, although strong, countries with experience and they never actually break the rules of diplomacy. Diplomacy is studying. You think you are exposed to social media and information you got, and you become lazy sometimes because you do not study. You do not, go from the level 1 to level 10 of a relationship with the country, because you've got everything online and you can do the research quickly, but you don't take down notes because you think you can always go back and find out. A diplomat at none should always have a business card, a notebook, and a pen with him. I mean a pen. You have to take down notes because you go back to that. Because when you go to the office, you go to a meeting, so to say, okay? You're going to meet your counterpart. You are posted in the embassy in Paris, so to say, all right? And you are tasked by your ambassador to go and meet your counterpart of, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France. You do talk and you think you understood everything, but as soon as you get out, you forget things because you don't take down notes. You have to take down notes always. That's very critical, very, very important. I mean, creating a relationship which you can always relate to is extremely important. Trust me, it's very, very important indeed. So although digitalization has some great benefits, it makes people somehow lazy because they need to read and write as well. Now, I'm not criticizing because we cannot actually do anything without any computer. You go to the office one day and your internet is not working. What do? You consider that day off. You go back home because you cannot work without the internet, right? Or the computer. Actually, you can, because you can read stuff, okay? Now they don't do it anymore, okay? Because they think everything has to be on the computer. What happens if the computer doesn't work one day? You know what I mean? So you have to really relate whatever is modern with the classic way as well. That's very important. Going back to your first question, yes, we are vulnerable very much because we are exposed to information. We are exposed to a lot of people. I mean, whatever we do, believe you me, there are people who follow us because they have a task to know what I think, okay? Because diplomacy is an art of, knowing things, all right? You go there and you understand what he has in mind, because does his country benefit for, doing business with the other country? You see, nowadays, the trade war is very, very, very critical. We used to have Cold War, now we have trade war, okay? Cyber attack and all that stuff. Because the new things invent new areas of protection and attack as well. Individuals are, for example, vulnerable with a lot of attacks which comes from all sorts, okay? You will have somebody hacking your account. You might be a public figure. Look at the disaster which happens there. They can post on your name something which is crazy. Well, it's crazy if somebody posts something, on your name, okay? You are a young diplomat. Let alone if somebody posts something on my account as ambassador, okay? I represent the country, I represent credentials, so I have a status out there. Vulnerability is there. It has always been there, in different ways. Now we are exposed because people, have a way to watch you all of the time, right, Adnan? I don't know if you understood my English, but I understood your French.
All right. I have another question from Mohammed. Let me activate his mic. Mohammed. All right. Mohammed, you can ask your question.
Well, go ahead. I'll be with you. I just love talking with young people. I just love them all.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
go
Hello,
ahead.
do you hear me?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Karima. Thank you, Mr. Karim, for your great platform. Thank you, Your Excellency. So, before I start my question, I want to mention something that between the diplomacy, digitalization, and there is a key that we need is a language. We need a common language. So this is one of the big problem of the poor countries. We do not care about the importance of languages. This is what I want to say. And for my question is, how can digital diplomacy be helpful to solve big international problems? When we see, for example, the problem of America and China, when the big data is the big problem between them.
You mean the big data is the big problem?
Yes.
Ha, ha, ha. That's a good question.
And we can talk about here about 5G.
Yes. Well, listen, I'm not going to enter into specifics, but everybody is in competition. Remember, one small business, a shoe shop, is in competition with the other shoe shop in the other side of the, of the road. Okay, it's business. Everybody wants to sell more and earn more. All right. It's exactly the same concept worldwide. I mean, you build a business and you want to have a better business and more, sale than the other one, of course. So is the same thing with countries. Although countries operate not like business, because business have a different set of rules, countries have different set of rules. Of course, states, have the United Nations, they have a lot of treaties, international treaties they abide with, treaties and rules they cannot, human rights and all that. But when it comes to economy, everybody wants to sell more, and they want to have their own people have a better life because they can stay in power more, and they can have a stronger government, they can have a stronger military, so that they can have more influence in the world arena. Now, I don't think that's the moment to discuss the trade war between China and America, because they have their own teams to sort them out. But it's basically what I said before. Everybody wants more for itself. That's it. And you do want more about, for yourself than somebody who has the same business you do. But in terms of what we think, well, let me put it this way. Countries have always had disputes with each other. The difference between then and now is that we open our television, open our mobile, right? And we know exactly what is happening in any part of the world because news breaks. So we hear more about stuff. Even with COVID, for example. Do you know how many diseases this world has gone through? A lot of them, all right? A lot of people died, and even more than COVID, people, victims have. But the thing is that we do hear about this in real time. 50 years ago, how would we know what is happening in some parts of Africa or Asia or Europe? People were dying, but there wasn't a big mess out of it. You see, it is the information which goes so instantly, and that's how the world has changed, and we all have to adapt. I told Yuda early on, I don't know who asked me, but I said, we have to choose what side we have to be, what kind of messages we have to send, because we all have access on social media, and depends whom we make friends and what messages do we send over. So Karim Dervish with his online school, you know, I'm sure he teaches people and he promotes peace, and that's what, and Karima does with diplomacy. I really wish to see you somewhere representing your country as ambassadors. You would be wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and I'm so proud of you, Miss Karima. You've really made me love Morocco more since I've met you, because you represent your country beautiful. And now that I know you others, I mean, I promise I love you more, because I mean, I've been to your country. It's absolutely amazing. People are wonderful. People are absolutely wonderful. They want to give you the best. There are some bad people out there, of course, but keep away from them. All right? Go ahead. I can have a few more questions.
Okay.
Yes,
I
thank
hope
you.
you're enjoying it.
Yes, we do. I have a question here, but I think it was asked, but maybe I can have a complementary question to that. Hajar said why some governments are still slow when it comes to adopting technology or even adopting digital diplomacy too. And here, maybe I can complement her question. Do you think that many foreign ministries are reluctant to use technology and digital platforms because they fear to lose some of its power and also bureaucracy and protocol that characterize diplomacy? Are they fearing cyber security? Why do you
Yes.
think they
Yeah.
are very reluctant to?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that is true as well. That is a possibility. I mean, look, North Korea, for example, dictatorships cannot allow for information to flow freely. They cannot do that. They simply stop public, you know, to be able to get informed and know what is happening. It's not because they don't have the money. It's exactly as you said, Karima, because they don't want to do it. I mean, this is part diplomacy, digitalization, internet is part of human speech, which is by all means the fundamental human right. I mean, as much as you need freedom, you have the need to express yourself. It doesn't matter, and it's not even said that you will be, people will agree with you all the time. They don't agree with me all of the time, of course, but at least they have the right to express themselves. So yes, unfortunately, very unfortunate. Um, there are governments who are oppressive. There are still a lot of them in the world. And you guys have a role. We all have a role to make this world a better one. Okay?
Thank you, Ambassador. I have one of our distinguished guest participants with us today is Mrs. Pamla from Oda Nipad from the EU from South Africa. And she has a question for you, Ambassador.
Yes, go ahead, Emma.
Hi, thank you, Ambassador. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear
Hi,
you.
thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. It's not more of a question, but a comment. I'm just picking up on the last discussion about governments and diplomacy on making technology accessible. I just think it's also, you know, governments, as much as the priority now is in the health sector, it's really important that technology is also given an investment in governments. Our students are being frustrated, I think, and prior to COVID, many have left our countries to pursue studies abroad. And now some countries are even being cut off the world because of the lack or neglect of technology. And in order for our students, our students could be impacted from not returning home after they have pursued their studies abroad. So I think this, you know, diplomacy in a way could have an impact on making a difference. And just another quick comment about data. In many of our discussions and meetings, data more and more is becoming relevant and imperative to inform policy decisions, but the speed of which data is being shared is absolutely imperative. You know, data could be in all categories. It's important also that governments lean on this and use the data in an informed way to think for future, the way the future is changing, and you know, we have to be doing business differently. They all speak about the new normal. This is the new normal, but We have to be more innovative in how we actually approach development in our countries. And I really think that this should be a clear focus. Our youth are really urging for technology. We see what's happening in Addis Ababa right now. And I think it's really important that African countries are not cut off the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Pamla, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's so true. Countries should not really be cut off from a way of receiving informations, and that's very unfortunate to hear, of course. I what you said struck me because I really worked a lot to bring a lot of students back home, Albanian students who are studying everywhere in Europe and in the world actually, but basically in Europe. It was at one point the lockdown was as such as they would even close the dormitories because of the risk of COVID spread, and students out of sudden let without a bed to stay, or they had to find a way to come back, and it has been a disaster. It has been very, very difficult, but thank God our government did a great job. We sent our planes. We have an Albanian Airlines who flies with our flag. So we collected our students, and they, most of them are back now. And Europe is steady a little bit with COVID. They open up, they're just closing it back again. It's unfortunate. Now, I think all this happened because this is a total unusual situation, Pamla. It is, we never know the world will be like this. We never know that one day in the morning, we couldn't get out from, our home because, we were forced to stay home because of the spread of COVID. So everybody was totally shocked. I don't know if you heard me in the beginning, the first few weeks we were in denial. We didn't even understand what is happening. We was in shock. Then we understood that we have to adapt. Let's use Zoom, let's use Skype, let's talk with each other. So what saved us and what saved the world in many ways was the internet, the communication we had with people through the modern means of communication, because otherwise the stress would have been higher, the difficulty would have been much higher, of course, and people will go crazy. But what the pressure was, pressured off because of we had the means to communicate with each other, thank God, through internet, all right. Now, going back to diplomacy, well, I don't exactly know how many countries in Africa or somewhere else in the world don't have their attention, so to say, on sponsoring into digitalization of diplomacy. And if they don't do, trust me, they're wrong. They will do it one day. But it's so difficult nowadays to communicate, share informations, or or resolve conflicts if you don't have communication with each other. If you cannot fly to Addis Ababa, for example, you cannot even enter because your government has closed borders in order to protect people from further infections. How would you choose this? How would you resolve a certain conflict that you have unless you have digital diplomacy? It's imperative. It's a lifesaver. Now, let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I don't know how many years ago, we had some students in Yemen, all right? And there was this conflict with Houthis, in Yemen. So there was war there, and we had students just cut off. They were there, they couldn't leave the war zone. Believe you me, it has been so difficult because we couldn't even fly ourselves there, because even if you have immunity, diplomatic immunity, nobody will touch you. But the fact is you cannot even cross the zone, the war zone. It's the digital diplomacy would help, us really bring our students back and resolve a certain issue. And there are a lot of issues like that, a lot of issues like that. And I do hope indeed, and as I said, I do hope one day you will be ambassadors of your country. But my advice to you again, if you want to be diplomats, never go out without a pen, a book, and some business cards for people to know who you are. That's important. You may think I have my phone with me. Your phone dies. Trust me, you have to write things down. It's much better, okay? You can take pictures and post them on Facebook, but what you're thinking are, you have to write them down so you can always, when you go back to your office, you can reproduce what you said with each other. Karima, you can move to somebody else. I just love talking with you, but I don't want to.
I have a last question, I think, from Youssef, and then I'm going to me and Karim to ask the final questions for you, Excellency. Go ahead, Youssef.
Where is Yusuf from?
From Morocco.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank you, Your Excellency, for your rich output and input on the current situation. So as we are building this rich, informative webinar, one can only settle down on the fact that the digital diplomacy will eventually be framed and defined as a form of public diplomacy, since it takes into consideration the various types of social media. So my question is, how can a country or a union, for example, the European Union, utilize the digital diplomacy to have the maximum efficiency in both the national and the international scene? Thank you.
That's very, very smart, Yusuf. Well, listen, I can talk to you a lot about European Union. We are in Europe, and Albania is not a member of Europe. We are a candidate to become a member of Europe, but our policies are identical. We do follow what European Parliament, the European Commission does. So basically, we are very, very, very attached to the policy. Now, I'll go back what I said in the beginning. There is no diplomacy, no classic diplomacy can really change the way no diplomacy can change, the classic diplomacy can change the digital diplomacy. The way you do business is different, but it's a necessity. It cannot replace each other, but it simply complements each other. That's exactly what I would say to you. However they can affect, they can go and do big meetings online and whatever. It's not the same, but you have to adapt with the developments. That's what I really want to tell you all.
Yeah. Ambassador, we have Juan from Kenya who just asked, what are the requirements for becoming a diplomat? I think he wants to pursue a career in diplomat. All right. Unmute your mic, Ambassador.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, you can hear me now.
It's okay. Yeah, we have
the requirements to be a diplomat.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite questions. Since I wished you all would become diplomats, I will tell you what. Number one, you have to read. What's the name of the guy who asked?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Juan Otieno from Kenya.
All right, listen. You must read a lot. This is extremely important, absolutely important. You have to educate yourself and know a lot, okay? I know there are some diplomats who, well, because they have nepotism, friends, and they get there, but I'm talking about the ones who really deserves to be diplomat, okay? Because they represent the country. You have to read well. You have to learn minimum one language, which is English. When you have another one, which is French, is even better. But criteria to be a diplomat is a great will to help your country and serve your country. Serving your country is the most important thing. And that's what should drive you do things. You should be driven by the love for the country. There are a lot of diplomats who work for one government, get paid from one government, but unfortunately they didn't do what they should do. Eventually, they failed doing things. But when diplomacy fails, remember, war starts when diplomacy stops talking, and the war ends when diplomacy starts. So remember how important your role is. It's extremely important. Your role is extremely important. So if you really want to become a diplomat, you aim for it and you'll get it, okay? But you have to be smart. You have to be smart. A part of the fact that you serve the country, you have that's in your heart and your mind. You have to be clever and smart enough. You have to read. Never lose a day without reading and knowing something, because as you grow up, your time will be limited. You will not have as much time as you have now. How old you are, 20, 25. When you go 35, believe you me, 40, you will not have as much time as you have now, all right? So I hope I can see you as diplomat somewhere.
Actually, that builds on my last question. You know, you've been engaged online and offline with different audiences when you were ambassador. I remember when you were ambassador in Turkey, you have been tirelessly doing a lot of efforts in engaging with the diaspora, with businesses, with media, and actually with the different audiences online, communicating about bilateral relations between Albania and Turkey, and also promoting Albania to Turkey and also to the world. So from your experience, what are the best practices and lessons learned from your engagement online? And do you think that online, which is currently now the trend, is going to replace offline, or do we need to combine our traditional way of doing diplomacy with the new trends of digitalization?
Oh, Karima, this is a good question. This is a very good question indeed. And I will come back with another question. Now, and that's for you too, Karim. You want to do diplomacy, all right? What is better than I invite you for dinner and lunch and we can talk and have a nice coffee somewhere nice and we can discuss everything? Or I can invite you on Zoom and talk. Tell me which one is better. That's for you too, Karim.
I prefer a dinner and a coffee.
Same for me. You know, Your Excellency, just before we had this talk, we had a training on digital diplomacy, and you know, we gave them 15 minutes break and said, "What about coffee?" And I said, "Okay, we need e-coffee." So we no longer have receptions and dinners and coffee breaks.
No, but listen,
Karima, we are working on this option on Laclasse.ma.
Is it right?
First year coffee.
I tell you, Karim, it's so important because you have to really, interaction is very important. I hear you talk a lot, and I read some of your works, Karima. You say interaction, and you appeal for interaction. Interaction is extremely important. Interaction online, interaction. But human interaction is paramount important. It cannot be replaced with any digital. This is part of our life now. Remember for 1 minute, and I'm asking everybody, if your phone does not work for a minute, what happens with you? You just go crazy, right? And this is digitalization. This is how we have adapted ourselves. We are a tool in this world. So is internet, and you know it has become, you know, part of the body. I hope I made sense for some of you listening to me, and I must tell you that I've enjoyed and learned from your questions as much as you may probably have learned from me. But keep up with that, Miss Karima. Try doing this as much as you can. I'll be happy to come back, but you have to let me know in advance, so I have to set up my time as well. But it's good to interact with you, okay? Because I learn from you as much as you do from me as well.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for giving us this time to speak to our participants. And I think your questions and your answers are complementing what we have started today about digital diplomacy and other aspects of diplomacy in general. Thank you, all the participants who have been here with us today, starting our amazing program for young people. We thought that it's highly important to work together with Laclasse.ma and also with these amazing participants who have a lot to say and share with us. And I think we're going to do amazing work together all along this summer. We have launched, Ambassador, the Africa Next Gen Academy, Leaders Academy, who will be empowering young leaders from the African continent on digitalization, because we thought that it's highly important to contribute as an international center for diplomacy in this field and work together as we are developing with some youth a report on the impact of COVID-19 and empowering young people to provide us with their view and input about how they see Africa in post-COVID-19. So the younger generation voice is important, and we cannot see the building up of new policies without their voice. So thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. And we're going to send you more information about our next training, which is going to be about personal branding and e-reputation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Karim. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us today.
All the best. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.